All right. All right. We're going to use a thing from the order of the trapezoid and go through each angle. All right. Before we do that, obviously what I would like to do, because I want you guys to share with us your experience. So this would be the time, again, as we said before, we don't like to just do things to be doing them. That's pointless. Those that know. And not just, us, but you guys shouldn't do anything just to be doing it. That becomes pointless. So I know the objective is sometimes when you do a ritual for the first time, you absorb it all at once. Sometimes it may not make sense, or sometimes it's just a lot going on and your mind wanders and you're thinking about different things. So we could start with some open questions, and then what we want to do in this session is go through each angle, have a brief discussion on it. The objective of doing this, so when you leave here, you take that with you, and you keep reflecting on these angles and how you can apply this in your everyday life to make yourself better on all levels. And again, like I was saying in the ante room or the chamber room, preparation room, whatever you want to call it, the whole purpose of this is not to just focus on mundane shit, because the problem that we see is people just keep focusing on surface shit. Like I said, I use the prosperity manifestation thing because we always get that. Like, what do you want to fix about yourself? I want to prosper, financial success. Well, everybody wants to do that. But are you focusing, again, like I said in there, on maybe there's a character flaw or a personality trait that's preventing that from happening? That's what you need to focus on. That's what the 9 angles is about. So having said that, does anybody want to ask any questions first and foremost, about the ritual? Anybody have any questions? And if you don't, I don't believe that shit. And you just went through it. Anybody?
Well, I got a question. It seemed like some of those angles was going against each other.
They were. Especially the 6th is the key. Only in the sense, like when it was talking about the 4 and the 5 and one canceling the other out. If you really pay attention, we're going to get into that in each one. The 6th represents, like one of the symbols of the 6th is ice. What is ice? What ice? What's the element? It's what?
Yeah, you froze.
It's froze. Okay. But what also happens to ice?
It melts.
It melts, and it what? Evaporates. It changes. It transitions. So the 6th angle represents everybody gets to points in their life where they're frozen, right? Mm-hmm. But people deal with that stagnation. They approach it on different levels. Some stay frozen and never consciously wake up. Some take that state of stagnation, that adversity, and also, as you just said, ice melts, it evaporates, it changes, it makes a transition. So, good point. Anybody else? So you guys break down the whole ritual, so I can get one of you up here to just break down the whole ritual. Don't, again, it's the objective of this is not to just go through it. The objective of it is to absorb. Now, if there's a lot running through your head and you're not sure, that's one thing. If anybody doesn't have any questions, then we'll go ahead and go through that.
Does the order have the significance?
No. No and yes. And I want to make that sound confusing. You put it in the order based on what you're dealing with. Now, is there any particular order per se? Not really. But you might find yourself at the 5th angle right now. But you might revert back to
Because it sounded like, okay, the first one was infinite, and then it sounded like it kind of went like down, like like infinite was number 1, like because that's infinite, and then
correct. It does and it doesn't, because infinite has what? Remember, it talked about dimension. It has what? No beginning,
no end,
and no end. So it depends on how you approach that infinite. I would not look at infinite as a starting point. You understand? Because
that's why I asked you that, because that was the first one.
Correct.
So it would seem like that was the starting point.
But I can put that, if I don't understand the infinite mind, I may have to place that somewhere later down the road because I'm not at that, not at that understanding. But no, in essence, what you're saying, yes. That's why I said yes and no. Because when you say exist, when something just is, like when we say at the end of every ritual, so it is done. That's it. when you start to, I'm trying to make the best sense. When you start to, try to put all these theories behind it and explain it. When we say so it is done, we leave it there. That's kind of what infinite means, or it is. There's nothing you can put to describe that first angle, but everything manifests, lack of a better word, from that angle, yes, in that sense. You want to add anything to that first angle?
Yeah, just remember, it's like the first angle is take a dot. From that dot, you could go any direction, right? When you create the first angle, you can go to the left, you can go to the right. See, back there, it's all from that first dot. You could go in many different directions. That's symbolic of your life. You're like that black dot that's constantly transforming, changing, altering, adapting to everyday existence and circumstances and events that may occur. If you're not fluid enough like that dot who's infinite, no beginning, no end, you're going to get stuck, frozen, right? And not be able to be fluid, become that liquid, that gas, right? You won't be able to gravitate to where your spirit's guiding you because you remain frozen, unwilling to move. You're no longer infinite. You're no longer beginning or end. You're somewhere in a point, and you lost your mind or your state of being that you are infinite and you can alter and change at any point. You just now gave into being a servant instead of the master or the scientist controlling your life. So the point is always your point of reference in any part of your life. It is where you can either have a frozen existence by giving into whatever it is the process, or you can be the creator and say, okay, I want to go this way, that way. Create your own angles in life. Create your own reality in life.
That's a good point. And remember, like in vampirism, remember, the only god that a vampire worships is the god that he or she creates to suit their own needs. That's step one. But to touch on what he said, we're going to read the first angle of unity. That's step one. The concept of the universe as the totality of existence. And remember, it talked about dimensions, and in between the points, it talked about the demons, right? Which are these superior, people hear that word and they spook the fuck out, because unfortunately they're space cadets. The demons reside, these energies, you can call them prana energies if you want, they reside on those dimensions that were mentioned. But where does this all happen? Where is this all taking place? Say it. Don't be afraid. Talk. Say it.
In the mind.
Say it loud.
Say it proud.
Say it loud. Say it proud. In the mind. All right. So I want to keep this clear. We're not. That's why this ritual, if you look at it, and again, I want you to understand. That's why this ritual doesn't have an elaborate setting. There's not supposed to be a lot of things to distract you. It's very simple setting. You have the black flame right behind there in the cauldron, which always represents, the black flame represents what? The spark of all consciousness. Conscious community calls it melanin, right? On the left-hand path, we call it the black flame. It's the same thing. That represents the spark of all, the origin of all things, which neuromelanin ties into the brain, where we get the intelligence, or we get that ability to be able to perceive and decipher things, right? You have the 9 angles represented in the trapezoid, right? The 6-pointed star, but you got to look at it closely. And then there's just simply incense. The skull always represents you. Simply just represents you. Because, again, you are the foundation. And as, again, we went over that on the radio show, the core principles of vampire magic is step 1. You never remove yourself from the equation. Once you do, you're not in control anymore. It's a wrap. Okay? All right, so let's finish reading this first angle. Maybe we should just go through them and then kind of talk about them. Well, it's still early, but I don't want to get too late. Note that this does not, let me see, the concept of the universe as the totality of existence. Note this does not admit to monotheism, except in the sense of deism, because there is no room for conceptual distance between a god and a worshiper. Here's your answer. There's no room for that. The laughing one, now remember we talked about, you heard the term, you guys said a bunch of times, Azathoth, right? Well, let's talk about that. The laughing one is Azathoth, who is blind and an idiot. That represents you and your ignorance. Okay? Because in a condition of perfect unity, there is naught else to see, not any knowledge of anything else possible. I'm gonna skip some of this stuff here. And are you guys familiar with H.P. Lovecraft? Anybody read any of his workings? Okay, you probably understand some of this. Okay, some of this is inspired from that. What's my spot? Okay. Understand. Because in the contemporary there's no else. Not any knowledge of anything else possible. Understand, of course, that from Lovecraft's gods, rather beyond storytelling version of them, I'm going to skip that. In geometry, a singularity identifies a locus only. There is no extension in any direction. Even the locus is both there and not, since it has no dimensions at all. Locus, L-O-C-U-S, just so we're clear. Since it has no dimensions at all. Hence, there is an infinite number of loci. For example, on a 1-inch long line, an interesting mathematical paradox. Does everybody understand that? Everybody clear on that? There's no extension, we're talking infinite. So really, if that all that's an illusion. So, and the reason why I mentioned in the beginning of it, you cannot connect this to monotheism when it talks about that conception of infinite. Don't connect it to that, because that's not what it's talking about. Where humans struggle with, they're constantly trying to conceptualize things and put a beginning and an end on it, right? Quantum physics addresses this in a sense, if you study quantum. So this is what this is talking about. To understand the infinite mind and to understand where these demons or energies reside, you have to look at it on that, or in that first angle concept, all right? The second angle, duality. The profound and necessary total change of unity into symmetry and polarity. And it is symbolics of representations of Horus or Heru and Set. What greater polarity is there in the Egyptian mysteries than Horus and Set? So you were grasping that. You were when we were addressing or working with the second angle, we were dealing with the polarity we all deal with on a daily basis and wrestle with. We all wrestle with that. They call it the good and bad, the positive and the negative, the agreeable and the disagreeable to you. Like when you struggle every day to make decisions. Should I spend this money? Or making a budget, you're dealing with that polarity. I got an X amount of dollars. I got to make it work and get all this done. You're struggling with that Horus Set polarity. You want to add something to that? No? Keep going. Everybody clear on that? So this path, this is what I'm trying to say. Let me tell you what I said this a long time ago. You're going to see, and I've said this before, I've had private talks with some, you're going to see more people fall off because fear and ignorance. Let me tell you why I say fear and ignorance. Because if it's not something that's tangible that they can relate to, because let me tell you, I'm going to tell you this, and I know, trust me, I know. If we would have put a flyer out for drumming and ancestor worship, you'd have had about another 10, 15 people here. Trust me when I tell you. Because they don't know, and they're in that sixth angle, which we'll get to, and I'll give you the explanation why. They're frozen, afraid to come out of their comfort zone. Because I got calls throughout the week, people trying to figure out what the shit is, what it's about, how does it work. No, that's not how. Well, step one, it works by not telling your ass shit. Because on this path, you earn. There's no joining the club, sign a paper, get a card, and now you proclaim yourself to be a comedic master. You got a bunch of bullshit people walking around thinking they know something because they put on a certain clothing and they give themselves a title, and people think they know something. You start talking to people, you realize they absolutely don't know nothing. And it doesn't mean that we know everything, that's not what I'm saying. But I can tell you, there's more people that know nothing than something. I hate to say that, but that's a reality.
Remember, this knowledge and information is not, thousands of years ago, was not Google accessible. Okay? You didn't just type in and all these answers came up and all these mysteries. You had to earn it, and the only way you received it was mouth to ear. Meaning that you had to go through trials and tribulations to prove you were worthy to receive certain level of knowledge that could improve your life, that can help benefit you in a direction that you're walking. Right now, people just want everything. They don't want to earn anything. I read 1,000 books and I think I'm master guru. You understand? And really, they sound deep, but when you look at their personal life,
No results.
it's a wreck.
No
it's
results.
a mess.
No results.
You understand? because you want to play the part, dress the part, but in reality, the part will undress you sometime soon. And what's standing there? A frail, scary person, an egotistical, arrogant, but really an idiot. Remember, Azathoth starts at the idiot level.
The
You
laughing
understand?
one. Ignorance.
Laughing because people either laugh at you or you laugh at your own ignorance, but it's standing there as if you are the idiot, and if you can admit that to yourself, then you start taking the path to do what? To gain the knowledge, to gain the wisdom, to take the steps. But you have to start at the level of a fool. Remember, when you go into these old movies and the cars, they always have the joker or the jester. Everybody made fun of these people. But they started as a fool, played the fool, till they gained the wisdom. They gained the wisdom from their everyday existence within that courthouse or that court or that cathedral or that castle. And eventually that jester or that joker became the master. Every servant or joker is a master in disguise. They just haven't taken off the mask yet to realize it. So you have to understand that.
Now stop. One of the reasons if you caught it while you were wearing masks, but go ahead.
Yeah. So if you're in the process right now of unveiling these things, then what happens is you realize, as much as I know nothing. Only the fool thinks he knows
something.
everything.
That's right. That's right.
So when people ask you, what do you know? I know nothing is the best answer.
A wise man knows he knows
Nothing.
That's step one.
That's always the most important part, because if you can humble yourself to that reality, you will say, I know nothing. Listen, there's there's orders that have been around for hundreds and thousands of years. They're there for a reason. It's not for everybody to join the social club. That's not why they're there. But they're there for the sincere seeker who's seeking to walk a certain path to get the knowledge that is necessary for their personal life. It doesn't mean you go in there and you worship and you become a clown of whoever's the master teacher. That's ignorant. But you go in there for your growth. And they're there because they have knowledge that has been protected, okay, that is necessary for you to get. And while people are out here playing the fool and making all these videos about, oh, Freemasonry this and New World Order, all that, and you walk inside and you realize these fools know nothing.
Nothing.
You understand? Because everybody wants to sound deep. They want to sound like they're professors and gurus. Well, what happens is the mask, like I said earlier, will be revealed. It will be taken off. And that's the process of what you guys understood coming in. You started as the idiot, as Azathoth. You started as the ignorant. The fool who's now learning through different angles the process of life.
Yep. So again, to finish the second angle, the representation of Horus-Set, Yang and Yin, Yin and Yang, etc. The order of the planes and angles is the other term you heard a lot, Yog Sothoth, who is the shaper of energy. Right? This is all very relevant stuff. Is the shaper of energy and matter, described as the author of Earth in its matter, energy, and evolutionary configuration. Note that in pure duality, there is no room for judgment between the two. That's important. There is only one or the other. In duality, geometry creates a single extension line, meaning it all comes from the same thing. And you create it. What it's trying to tell you is you create it. So you went from that, when it's talking about the creator or author of Earth, matter, energy, and etc., when it says, like we were talking about a few minutes back, you create your own deity. See, where people struggle, I don't care how long they've been studying, I don't care how spiritual, conscious, you hear this term in all these conscious circles, I'm a god or I'm a goddess. And then I simply just asked, I always stop and ask, can you define to me in your words, not what you read in a book, not what you heard in a lecture, not some pre-definition that somebody stamped in your mind, to you, as you yourself, a unique individual, what does that mean to you? And 9 out of 10 times you get generic answers. God is, well, the Mother Earth, the original. I ain't talking about all that rehearsed shit. Because now anybody can give me that answer. What have you created? Because you should not answer like everybody else answers, because if you do, it shows me you're still a follower and you're enslaved mentality. Same thing, men do the same thing. I'm a God. Whoa, black man's God, the originator, created. I don't want to hear that old Nation of Islam bullshit. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm not asking you the surface generic answer. You know what a God means to a man who's in control of his destiny, who can maintain and take care of his family, is a living example to not just his family, to those around him. Sets the example, whether you may not agree what that individual does, but you respect him or her because they are a living example of success. These are the definitions we need, not some old generic shit we read in historical books. And I'm not saying that that's not important, because that's supposed to motivate us to find our way. So by all means, I'm not saying you're not supposed to study, read. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, when do you stand on your own? I posed this question. We were talking about this last night. We had a build about this last night. At what point does the student let go of the master's hand and become the master himself or herself? The problem is we got too many people that want to stay students and followers. And nobody wants to stand on their own too and make the declaration, I am a master. But be able to back it up and support it. Two different things. Yeah, well, of course, too much work. It's easy just to say I'm a Moor.
Yep.
And belong to some group. And I'm not trying to knock Moors or whoever. It's easy to just be in the Nation of Islam for 25, 30 years and be a follower and say, well, I'm loyal. And thinking and deceiving yourself your loyalty is going to get you some great reward or pie later down the road. You're fooling your damn self. Trust me. I'll bet my life on it. Trust me. You're fooling yourself. Third angle. This is a very critical stage, because the existence of a third element introduces the notion of choice between the two opposites, either absolutely or relatively, or of a choice to aspire or not to aspire to universal perfections. This is, you heard this term, right? Nylar Hotep, right? That's what that represented. How many times did you say that? So I'm trying to get you to see, we weren't just doing a bunch of gibberish. We weren't just making these invocations. When we're doing a ritual like this in a group setting, we're invocating. What does invocation mean? What were we doing? We were summoning the energies. Right? Everybody clear on that? All right. Then it goes on to say, otherwise Set, otherwise known in some circles as Lucifer or Satan, otherwise Prometheus or Thoth, same thing, who has created the power of perspective and the independent psyche of judgment. Here knowledge becomes possible in geometry. We now have the triangle. Now we have three, right? So we got three angles. What does three angles make up? I hope you're catching on. Makes up a triangle, right? Which is the most rigid of figures and also creates a two-dimensional plane. Note that per the coming forth by night, Horus and Set relationship actually fits into a threefold matrix rather than a twofold one. Set is an independent intelligence with perspective upon the non-conscious objective universe. What did it say though? The what? The shit you're not aware of. The non-conscious objective universe. We're not talking about the subjective. We're talking about you under an illusion here too. Shit goes on here you're not aware about. Because what? Because of this here. Alright? On one hand, in the chaos of the anti-objective universe, horror, on the other, the simple horror-set duality results from primitive Aristotle thinking. So kick me. Right? It uses that metaphor. So kick me. Okay? So you're always wrestling with that. I don't care what you're doing in life. You constantly wrestle with that. From the basic mundane, you want to know when that even takes place? Let me give you some mundane shit. You ever just get up, sit, show you the same type of thing. You ever just sit in the house, you want to get up to go grab something to eat, and you ever just open the refrigerator and you stand there for like a minute trying to figure out what the hell you want? Or you open up the pantry and you look in and what do I want? You're on a basic level, that's part of it. As simple as that may seem, what's happening is there's a part of you that said, I'm just using this because it's easy to relate to. There's a part of you that said, I'm hungry. There's another part of you that says, I don't want that shit. So you're wrestling to find something in between. How do you satisfy the part that wants something to eat and the part that don't want nothing to do with the shit? That's where you come in. Now you got to figure out, do I want some pretzels? Do I want a piece of fruit? What do I want? You understand? Now, how does it work when you just get up and automatically say, I want that? Because there's a certain part of your nature that took over. I want to just tear into that piece of cake, or I want to have a bowl of cereal. You're definitive in your choice. It's trying to show you how both of those actions and how the mind works and how, I'm just giving you something basic to relate to. And you want to add to that? We'll go to fourth one.
Yeah, I mean, the simple thing is, the more you enforce the I principle, not the I as in the aspect of too overbearing, but the I as in I'm in control of my life, the quicker your decisions become. And you won't second guess yourself as much. The second principle of constantly second guessing eventually leads to stagnation, leads to not doing anything, not accomplishing anything, becoming a lazy fool. Both are always in play, as Brother Beniti just said, because we struggle at with moments of laziness, and we struggle with moments of creative ingenuity, and we're just so charged up. But the more you exercise the principle of set, individuated consciousness, principle of taking control over your life, principle of stop worshiping and waiting and, hoping, you start to assert your confidence, you start to assert your strength, you start asserting your control over yourself, your decisions become greater. Doesn't mean that other side will go away. It's always going to be there. It's just you have more mastery over it. That's the key of becoming a master, is understanding that paradigm and what you do with it.
Mm-hmm. Look in the center of the trapezoid. Does anybody recognize that symbol right in the center? Look at it closer. What is that? Anybody? Look at it closer. You see it all the time. You ever see Egyptian statues? Look at that closely. That's the staff. You see the Natir always holding. That's a representation. The was. We mentioned that. That's you. And notice it's in the center. Okay? Remember, the occult, right? What do they say the basic meaning of the occult is? The hidden, right? Remember, this always speaks in symbols, allegory, concepts, metaphors. This is always projecting consciousness to your subconscious mind. Just by looking at that when you're in tune, it's projecting consciousness whether you're aware of it or not. You become aware when it settles in and you focus in and concentrate on it. So when somebody's a real occultist, it doesn't mean because they read a bunch of books and they dress like an occultist and they talk like an occultist. That's not what it means. It means that system right there. Now, this angle here. This is a good one. I love this one here. The fourth angle, the ram of the sun. Shub Negurath. Who does that represent in Egypt? We said that name a bunch of times, and we said the ram of the sun. We mentioned it in the ritual. Who does it represent in ancient Egypt? Ra. Amun Ra. But you see, here's the thing. Remember, we summons the ram of the sun. This is the thing that we tend to do. Sometimes we overthink. I know we're trying to put it all into perspective. We were using terminologies because now remember, when you're looking at it though, I want you to look at it like Ravana Noon said a minute ago. Now, as we're going through the angles, remember, like you said, you were the fool. You entered as the fool. Then you became the shaper and the controller of the energies. Now you're becoming, as we get into this angle here, the ram of the sun. It's showing you the process one must use to fix themselves. But it's showing you why I said in there, in the ante room, in the chamber room, I simply said, this is the prelude or the first step to really understanding magic and starting to take it to another level as far as, let's say you're going to practice vampirism. Because step one is always in any spiritual system to do an inventory and check of yourself. Get your shit right first. It's the old saying, you can't help nobody if you ain't right. Everybody, see, the problem with all these conscious circles, it's a save the world mission. And it fails 99.9% of the time. Because the people trying to do the saving are fucked up themselves. So you can't help somebody if you're corrupt. And I don't mean corrupt in the term on it, meaning if you got a lot of issues you haven't fixed about yourself. You know, you might have mommy-daddy issues. You might have relationship issues. You might be a horrible parent and you haven't addressed the shit yet. You may be not as good at what you thought you were, and you might find some hidden talents that you are good at and you didn't know you were.
That's the key right there. Hidden.
Hidden.
What does the word Amun mean? Or Aman?
The hidden one.
The hidden one.
And that's
That aspect of yourself that's
Amun.
hidden.
That's it.
And what you do when you discover it. Go ahead, because it goes
No.
into that.
Yeah. Amun is the hidden one. And we invoked it as the ram of the sun. We used the term Shub. We said it a bunch of times. Negurath, or Amun, right? Is a manifestation of the awakened human psyche. So now you're awake.
You're realizing it now.
We invoke and we come upon the fourth angle in a state of awareness. But don't get too happy now, because when we get to the sixth, with that awareness comes responsibility. There's a whole, we're dealing with something else. That's why I say the sixth is the most critical, because the sixth determines if you fail or if you succeed. We'll get to that in a minute. I want to jump the gun. So now you are awake. You've reached a state of awareness, right? It is thus that Satan is known to humanity, a personalized reflection, as it were the results of the messenger's working. Satan's other name, Lucifer, is that of light and enlightenment. Hence, the brilliance of the nine angles. With the number 4, we have geometrically a three-dimensional displacement in space. Hence, existence of matter and energy become possible. Hence, time becomes possible as the measurement of change, matter, and energy. And as we said before, there is no such thing as false calculated time. When it talks about the dimensions, this is something we used to say in old classes years ago when we used to teach the basic kinds of stuff. You have a clock, second hand going tick and tock, right? But there's nobody calculating the time between the tick and the tock. What that represents in quantum physics is when we talk about these dimensions and angles and these demons, they reside in between that tick and the tock. So they can't be, what we know as time on this physical realm is just a pure fucking illusion. And it's a tool that's used to keep people controlled. This is why we're always, like basic religion, we're always taught that there's a beginning and an end with everything we do in life. I got to get up to work. Work starts at 9, ends at 5.
Yep.
The day begins after midnight, ends at midnight. This is done to kind of keep you in that state when we get to the sixth angle. Frozen. Yeah. Some good shit, man. All right. Anything you want to add on that before we go to the fifth one?
No, just the tick and the tock. That moment in between. See, a lot of the young generation, they don't understand it. We've seen some of the old tick and tock clocks, right? There was
Second
always a
hands.
space of silence between the tick and the tock. That moment in between is where you have to figure out how to tap into. That sometimes we call the witching hour for some people. That's also the moment of truth, some people would say, because in that space is where the true opening happens into your subconscious mind, unconscious, where you tap in. But it's always between the tick and the tock. Nowadays, we don't have no sound on clocks. It just moves and, you don't have that reality. But that space in between, always remember that, because that space is key to the rest of the angles.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop us. Raise your hand. If you're absorbing it, fine. Because again, we want to make sure you're understanding this, not just doing it. Fifth angle, humanity as the physical vehicle for the expression of Setian or satanic psyche, as discussed in the fourth angle. Concept of the body as a necessary medium for the self-realization. Didn't say the outside realization. Didn't say some monotheistic interpretation of what deity is. People always forget that word. The self-realization. So who's going to make you aware of this? You. Okay? You can join whatever club you want, organization, spiritual movement. They're not going to give you what you need. The self-realization psyche, at least in its early stage, translation of this into physical representation of super energy matter forms, such as Set, via the creation of images, building to temples, etc. A temple with 5 trihedrons is a 4-faced pyramid, such as Giza. The 4, 5, 9 seal is the seal of the order of the trapezoid, a marvel of integrated, interrelated 4, 5, 9 values. As noted elsewhere, even the addition of 4 plus 5 plus 9 equals 18, and 1 and 8 equals 9. 9 represents infinite. There is no number after 9. Because even when you look at it in basic math, after 9 it goes to 10, right? Now it flips back to the 1, but the 0, which is before the 1, represents the circle, right? When the circle is infinite, as they say in metaphysics or quantum physics, nobody knows where the circle begins except for the person that what? Created it or drew it, right? So it's 0, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have the 1 that's flipped to the left, and now you're back to 0. And then the 1, 0 goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 19. Flip to the 2 to the left, now you're back to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see, this is why it's 9 angles. This is why 9 is the number of Set. This is why the bell is always rung 9 times to open and close a ritual, because it represents infinite. And we say, and so it is done. You can't change that. It's done. That's it. Finished.
Remember, 9 is also conception, birth. So when you say it is done, you just gave birth to your intention. You gave birth to your ritual. You gave birth to your thought process. You leave it there. The reason why you leave it there is because if you continue after that, you really didn't do anything. You just erase everything you did before that. There's no trust in what you did. You're still confused. You're still not sure. 9 is in itself birth, creation, existence again. So if you knew that, you would leave it there and not continue. I hear a lot of people, and I've discussed it with people. I say, okay, well, how'd you finish your ritual? I say, yeah, but what did you do after? Did you go and do something completely different than the ritual? Meaning, did you go and take a ride? Did you go and dance? I mean, something completely different to leave it there. Because if you take it with you, you're still not done. You really didn't trust that statement. It's done.
Excellent point. All right, so then this finishes off with the 5th. In geometry, 5 creates the pentagram. Here's another, pay attention to this, because this is an important reason why we utilize the pentagram. Pentagram. Teddy Pendergrass.
Teddy Pendergrass, bro.
The pentagram. I don't know where my head is. I'm thinking of Teddy and knocking some stuff. The pentagram, why it's such a popular symbol on this path and why it's utilized so much. All right. In geometry, 5 creates the pentagram, hence the golden section, hence the concept of perfection. This is why to Pythagoras and his priestly mentors, 5 was the most sublime of numbers, and why the pentagram was used as the seal of the Pythagorean Brotherhood. All right? Not just in the Pythagorean Brotherhood, it goes back to the 21st, 22nd dynasty of ancient Egypt, and you can find the pentagram on. It was utilized a lot of time when they would write something and they would use it as a seal. You can find it various temple inscriptions. The pentagram is origin is not something it's just used in modern day left hand path practices. It goes back that far, and that's why we utilize it, because we know what it means ritualistically, right? Baphomet, right? You see Baphomet enshrined in the pentagram, and we know what Baphomet represents. All right. So that's the 5th angle. And I'm surprised when we're talking about the left one, I'm surprised nobody asked that question first. Why were we wearing masks? Now, ask yourself this. What kind of mask did everybody wear? I wasn't really looking, to be honest, because I was locked in. Let me ask you, because it's going to tell you something about yourself. What kind of mask did you wear?
Well, the one I have was a really nice borrowed one that was...
What kind was it?
It had the nice sparkle on
Like
it.
a masquerade.
So,
It was a masquerade.
so it was a masquerade. Is that something that you had in here or something that belongs to you?
That's something that I borrowed from her.
Okay,
Yes, because I didn't know to bring one.
I got you.
I got this. Kind of remind me of some dark.
See,
Like,
So you had a hood, like a Grim
yeah,
Reaper
like a
type of
Grim-
hood.
Yeah.
Now, did you question yourself? You like that? What in your spirit gravitates towards that? just something attracts you to it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does it make you feel a certain way? And I might have to
Yeah.
share what you give me for yours on it then. Okay. Can you briefly, you ain't got to get into depth. What does it make? Does it make you, when you put it on, do you feel like you're isolated from the world? Or where does the mind go when you put it on?
Yeah, I feel like I'm isolated, and I feel like I feel powerful. Like I get a certain power when I put this on.
Okay.
Like not so much I'm the one judging because you can't see me. I see you. So it's like I'm that.
I got you.
I am that I am.
See
Put
me,
it
I
that
see
way.
you. I got you. Okay. What were you wearing, young man?
You got the same thing.
Same thing. Okay. I noticed you do a lot. What did you have?
Mine was a feline, so it was to me representing the second.
Second. Okay. That's self-explanatory. And you had some type of masquerade. No, you had like a holy death, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I know what that represents to you. All right, but in short, the reason why, and I'm bringing that up because leading up to the last couple weeks on the show and emails, again, it just irritates me when people try and. How many times do we say in this path, stop trying to figure everything out and just engulf yourself in the experience?
They don't trust themselves.
They don't.
Right. That's the problem. They are conditioned to just follow and not step outside the box. They so used to just being in a box. They don't know how to remove themselves out of it.
Right.
So it brings great fear. And hence you get all the emails, well, what it's going to be about.
It is fear. It's fear, and I mean, I don't listen to the show because I'm here and I'm working. I'm
Right.
trying to keep the business open. So
No, yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I see the things come through. So I really thought tonight was going to be. I really thought it was going to be Egyptian. There's something because I thought I saw one, but that must have been at Sophia's, and I was out of town or something, so I missed that one.
Yeah, I think that was
So-
the class one.
Yeah,
last
it was
month.
a class, and I thought, oh, okay, then I'm gonna get it here. And then when I saw the art, I said, oh, okay. Well, I don't know what this is related to necessarily, but I found it later this evening, the flyer that you sent.
Okay.
So yeah, it's fear. It's
It is.
definitely fear because I'm gonna say for myself, I mean I've been to a huge amount of your rituals.
Right.
And this particular one, okay, when you see the word angels and then you're thinking, okay, the opposite of angels might be demons, and then you're thinking, so yeah, it's definitely fear, but it's fear from what you have been taught
Correct.
when you were coming up. You
Correct.
know what I mean?
Right.
No, correct.
Me, I'm lucky enough to be open to just about everything out here. So, and then too, I know my strength. You know what I mean? I know where I am. So I'm like, okay, let me, sit with this and see. So I'm good. You know.
But it's funny because if the instructions just said to get a mask and that was it. See, people tend to try to because they're trying to, like you said, kind of comfort themselves because, like, if it said just get a mask, if it was a specific mask, it would have said you need this type of mask, et cetera, et cetera. It just said, and then people would email or call, and then and 99.9% didn't even show up. So that's how I know it's fear. Then they would call or send an email, and I would respond back and say, get whatever mask you choose. That's it. That answer wasn't good enough. Oh, so when you say whatever mask you choose, so can I?
Yeah, see, this because what happens is they're trying
Really?
to figure out the ritual before even being at the ritual. So they're trying to say, okay, well, is this going to be Egyptian theme or
There
is
you
this
go.
going to be, you know what I'm saying, something like that? So then they say, well, I got to get the mask to cater to that. See, that all that overthinking just took you right out of the mix. And basically, when you overthink, what happens? You don't end up doing anything. Thus, hardly anybody showed up.
Right.
Now I have to admit, I did read up on what.
That's fine.
Just
You
because
said- well,
I'm
that's
making an
good.
investment in travel.
No, but that's
so
fine.
I wanted to make sure it resonated with me enough to
That's fine.
move
But it's
forward.
good that you investigated.
That's
You should
fine.
always investigate things.
Yeah.
But there's the answer to the lazy ass people that were calling because if they would have did what you just did and sought out information on it, then they would at least do what I'm saying. Then they would have at least had a general idea And they wouldn't have been worried about asking this question and that question. What do we do this? That's all you had to do. It just goes to show you how people are mentally controlled. All they had to do was go on their computer and Google and type in, and they would have grasped it a lot. You may not have found the ritual per se exactly the way we're doing it now, talking about it, because we always take stuff and kind of adjust it a little bit. For the most part, you can find it. You understand? But the breakdown you may not find that we're doing here because it comes from something that we deal with. But my whole point is, in general, yes, you can find it. So the lazy ass people that were so focused on trying to get it out of us could have prepared themselves on their own. What did it say? Awareness, self-realization. So they're trapped at that level, and it's sad to say it's anything. You could do that with anything, but let me send an annoying ass email. Let me call and be repetitive and repeat myself. Let me get on a radio show and ask the same old shit over and over. All that does is tell me how weak and pathetic you are. I'm sorry, I can't put it any other way. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to make it sound nice, because one thing on this path you'll realize when we get through these angles, you don't give a shit what anybody thinks about you. It's irrelevant. Because when you start catering to what people think about you, you become a weak mortal. You become somebody that can be taken advantage of and manipulated. You don't do that on this path. So sometimes people get dissatisfied because we give them a basic 1, 2, 3 word answer, but that's not good enough for them. So they go, hey, what kind of mask should I get for the ritual? Any mask you like.
That's too vague, brother.
So they want you to go, no, brother, see, what you should get is this horse mask. The reason why you should get this horse mask, blah, 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 blah. So now you're catering to their ego, and now they go get it, and they feel all proud and shit. Because the reason why we say to get your own mask, it says something about your nature, your character, and your personality. Whatever you naturally chose, whatever circumstance it was, even if you in the last minute on the fly, that happened for a reason. That's the whole point. Anyway, some get it, some don't. All right, so it finishes off here, the 6th angle. I'm sorry. Not the 6th.
Yeah, you want the 5th.
I'm on the 5th angle, yeah. It finishes off with the Pythagorean brother. 6th angle we're on now. I'm sorry. Okay, this is very important. If Crowley, who considered his 10th ether to be accursed, then this would be the accursed, or should I say, hexed, of the 9 angles. Pay attention. It is the hexagon and hexagram, also the seal of the Jews, authors and proponents of the world's most nihilistic and self-hating monotheism.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. The hexagon corrupts the golden rectangle. It adds an angle and a line to the pentagram and pentagon, thus destroying them. 6 is symmetry, obese and unnecessary. 2 and 4 are quite adequate for the principle, and 2 and 4 are one of the 2 sacred numbers in ancient Egypt. The seeds of the destruction of the hexagonal forms are carried within them. However, for they necessarily embrace 2 trapezoids, the 4, and the pentagram defined by those trapezoids, the 5, hence the 4 plus 5, the 9. What do they say up, down, or inverted 6 is what? So now we got to approach this. Let's look at it from a mathematical perspective first. Just as 6 represents the stagnation, being frozen, you have the ability to turn that 6, we're speaking metaphorically now, and turn it upside down and make it a 9. Just, it's the illusion. There's really no separation. But let's talk about this real quick, because this is where I find, in relation to our discussion with the 9 angles, people in their spiritual studies or evolution, or I'm traveling on this path, this is where I find they get stuck. Because they get to a point where it may not be panning out to what they want it to be.
Yep.
Right? Or they may be succumbing to their weaknesses. Go ahead, you want to add something to that?
Well, and that's when they get to this 6 stagnation, frozen. What I've noticed is a lot of people had a preconceived notion of what they wanted it to be, and then when it veered off to something they didn't want to be, they couldn't handle it, so they just stayed stuck and went right back to what they knew. The problem with that is, if you're not willing to go through the chaos, then you're not willing to grow. Life, you never really grow when everything is so-called perfect, everything is in balance and lovely and all these great things, there's no growth there. If you look at the scales, they're stagnated because they're not moving. And then people will say, yeah, but you know, Matt, no, listen, stop. Because according to all that, what's supposed to outweigh the other in the Kemetic philosophy?
Tensions.
Yeah. And then your heart, right, is supposed to do what?
Be light.
Be as light as a phone.
So eventually, one or the other is going to always be in flux, because it is in flux where you transform or change or grow, right? So the problem is, if I come into, let's say, the left-hand path, and I already have a preconceived notion, I'm coming in this because I'm going to be such a dark wizard, and I'm going to, do all these great things. And then you come in there and you find out you're more messed up. Then you realize, see, that didn't feed my ego anymore. That didn't feed my
Found out
preconceived
some
notion
shit wasn't right.
that I was, Tahuti Rabe or something, Now I'm just regular old Joe Schmo who has a bunch of issues and problems. So the problem with that is I'm not going to face it. It's too difficult. So I'd rather just stay stuck and go back to what I know and never progress. But if you can take the 6, you're giving birth to who? The real you, who went through the process of digging within your subconscious mind, the 6 feet under, the grave, right? Being buried, digging yourself out of the grave, being reborn. But now, you've dealt
Why
with
they made
all
that
your-
term? Bury 6 feet under?
Yeah. But you've dealt with your ish now, right? Now your stuff is all forward. You understand. That doesn't mean that it won't come back. Don't get it twisted. Just because you dealt with it does not mean that it's not going to creep back in. But you now have the knowledge and the wisdom how to put that sucker under your control when it starts trying to bear its old habitual ways to control your life. So instead of reacting in anger, you're no longer a reactionary human being. You're what? More proactive, where you can see and be before the cause and effect. You're not in the cause and the effect, and you're the effect after the cause. You are controlling the cause before it even gets to the effect. Oh, I see that sucker rising with me. I got you. I'm going to put you back under my control, my will. My true will is taking control of this.
That's right.
So you're taking the 6, birthing 9, giving birth to your true self. But to do that, you have to go through 6 angles so far, right? You're at the 6, which is the most pivotal point, because you either give up here or you progress to the 7, 8, and 9 where you're reborn again, right? So you either stay or you go. Now ask the question. People you know, how many people you personally know in your life are still at the 6?
Shit.
You don't progress now. You don't move down in certain directions and levels of your life. They're still at the 6. That's the homeboy or the homegirl. Peoples I know, I could go back to New York right now. I could go back to Hartford right now. And they're still in the hood, sitting in the same corner, slinging the same stuff, talking the same crap, and not done nothing.
Frozen, stagnated.
You understand? That's because they refuse to face themselves. The hardest thing to do is when you have the mask on, you felt that energy, that power, right? You invoke that inside you because your mind altered its consciousness and brought forth something that's inside of you. The trick is, how do you keep it there?
That's the challenge, yo.
How do you keep that there on a
feeling
consistent
of power.
basis? You understand? Not just in your subconscious, unconscious. How do you keep it there consciously?
And you can.
Yeah. And bring it forth to become that reality. Sekhmet. How do you keep her there? You understand? How does that stay there? Not just, okay, well, I feel good because I have the mask, but when the mask comes off, that invoked energy should stay with you for a while till you realize, yo, this is some real ish. This is some stuff that's really inside of me. It's not just me pretending I'm Sekhmet. I'm feeling Sekhmet. You understand? That doesn't mean you got to go slice and dice and do all this other stuff Sekhmet did. What I'm saying is you feel that. So how, when that rage hits you like Sekhmet, how do you channel that? You understand? How do you use that to your benefit?
But there's also sexual aspect
Yeah.
of segment, a vampiric aspect of segments. You gotta ask yourself that question. But I wanted to back up to something you said before I forget with the scales. When you mentioned the comedic concept of the scales, I bring up intentions because think of it this way: you see a homeless person, right? You give them money to help them, right? So you say. Some people do things because they just want to be seen. The reason why I bring up intent: what is your intent? Intent is everything on this path. So, you see pastors or religious people, are you doing something because like you're expecting something in return? That's not doing something with sincere intent. This is the difference. A person on this path understand that. So, if I see a homeless person, right, and I just want to give them money, I just want to give them money and that's it. But you have people that do things to be seen because they're not doing it because their intent was because they sincerely wanted to help somebody. They did it, and especially if somebody got to tell you about the shit they do all the time. You understand? Oh, you know what? I gave a homeless man $20. Who the fuck cares? You don't need to tell me that. That's between you and the homeless man. But this is what it's talking about: the concept of intent. Because when it says actions and deeds is what weighs the scale, but what guides those actions and deeds is the intent that fuels them. Apply that to everything in life.
Here's what's interesting about that. Most of the time when you do something like that, it's a selfish means. You may not think so because you're handing out and giving this, but there's some selfish motive behind it, whether you want the person to say thank you. It may not seem like it's selfish, but you're doing it because you want what back? You want some kind of praise or some kind of gratitude or something. If you really, really want to do it, you don't care what they say. You just do it and be about your business.
That's it.
But the fact you doing it just so, I'm going to be so nice and give them $1. I'm going to give them $1 and they're going to say, oh, thank you, brother, thank you, sister. You're doing it still, it's still selfish means. I bring that up because the minute you realize that you start doing things in life, most of the time it's based on selfish things, then you start to understand that how and when you should do those things. Not just because you were taught you should do those things and it's going to make the world better. Because there's a lot of people you gave money to in the world and got better.
At all.
There's a lot of people you helped out
At
and the
all.
world has not gotten better. The reason it hasn't gotten better because we're all in a state of delusion in our mind that if I do this, this is the reciprocity behind it. No, it's not. The real reality is if you take ownership and realize a lot of things I do is because I do have some selfish motive behind it, then I start to realize how, when I do things, okay, I got that. I understand it's a selfish thing. But then you start to understand who and what you should do it for. It sounds weird now, but when you start to realize and take ownership, you'll start seeing it.
That's a good point, because bottom line is this: the number one law in this universe, we've said it a million times, is the law of self-preservation.
Yep.
When it all boils down to it, and I don't say this in a bad way, we're all selfish motherfuckers. Don't fool yourself. You can talk all that unity, peace, and love shit, but when it come down to survival, you're gonna take care of you first. I don't care. I don't care who you are. You say, no, not me. I had one brother sit here and give me this sad story. Well, if the children, I'm not talking about if there was children around. That also applies to, might be a certain circle. Because what if we got down to the point where we were trapped in this room and there was only enough of food for 3
Exactly.
people?
But
What the fuck would happen?
How many of y'all saw the what's that movie that just came out in the summer, the experiment one?
Oh, the one when they were in the building?
Yeah,
Oh, I can't
I
remember.
forgot the name of it, but if you get a chance, go
Belco.
see it. Yeah, Belco Experiment.
Yeah.
Crazy
Right
shit.
now, we got locked in this room, okay? And they said we cannot come out, okay? For no reason we could get out of this place unless you start taking somebody else out in the mix until the last person standing. Now, everybody, when you watch the movie, there's a lot of people who are compassionate, too compassionate. They got taken out quick, right? There was a guy who was compassionate, but towards the end of the movie, he starts to realize things. I ain't gonna ruin it, but understand this. People think like that, but the minute you're trapped and you're forced to survive,
A whole different mechanism kicks in.
the mentality shifts, and what was homeboys turn into enemies quick. Okay? Same concept. There was one piece of whatever food here, and that was all we had to survive. Are we gonna share that ration? We're gonna ration it out. Somebody eventually gonna say, "Look, man, somebody got to survive this." You understand? Somebody got to be strong enough to survive this. While we rationing, we're all getting weaker instead of taking one person, making them stronger. You understand?
But most of the time, you use that example, we would at first try to, what it always starts out, you try to first evenly try to distribute it. Right? It starts out like that until the less disciplined one can't just take the small
Yeah,
portion.
Right.
Take 'em- she or
That's
she-
when the bullshit starts.
That's right.
That's when the bullshit starts. So we could say, look, we got this amount of food if we break it down to this days, but
Yeah.
nobody can go past that quantity.
Right.
Please.
But then the person that's the weakest, that's going to falter, is going to disrupt that structure, and then all the chaos kicks in.
That's
The
right.
bullshit
That's
starts to
exactly
go.
how it goes.
That's the
But
challenge of who's
even
the
though we're
strongest.
talking about things that, might seem extreme, and we're not speaking just in a literal sense, apply this also into in your everyday life. It's the same shit. All right? All right. Seventh angle. Almost there. We're doing good. The destruction of the status of monotheism by the addition of a line/angle to the hex. The legacy of the first beast of Revelation and his sevenfold steel and star of Babylon, the forces of the eon of Horus overcoming those of the eon of Osiris, yet the only thing that can be said of seven, it is that it is an effective destroyer of six. It has no creative properties of its own. It has neither the strength of symmetry nor the magical powers of symmetrical predecessors, 1, 3, and 5. Proponents of sixism instinctively fear seven. They warn about such things as the seventh son, of a seventh son, of the seven towers of Satan, in Yazidi legend, of the seventh seal, of the jewel of the seven stars. Seven is thus a harbinger of doom to six, a shadowing forth of the apocalypse to come, geometrically and numerically. Like the eon of Horus, seven has an identity crisis. Additions or multiplications of powers of seven yield all sorts of random values and relationships. Now ask yourself, why does now you understand why religion represents confusion and ignorance? Because of everything just described there, of what seven represents. And seven is prominent in monotheism.
All the time.
Seven seal, 7 days of creation,
Yep.
seven this, seven that. What they are telling you subliminally, that by accepting these religious ideologies, you are also embracing ignorance. Because seven what? Represents doom to six, because seven really has no properties. Now we're taught the reverse. Seven is always considered a lucky number, lucky seven. Right? You hear all these things. Why they make 7 days in a week? Right? Think about it. 7 days of creation, seven seal in the book of Revelation, 777. It's all encoded in religion. Islam too, Judaism too. It's all connected.
Yeah.
So,
And he mentions here the Jews use a 6-pointer star, right? What if their sacred number in their holy book is 7 laced in there? Why don't they use a 7-pointer star? Why don't Christians use a
they use
7-pointer
the
star?
6. That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? Why don't Muslims use a 7-pointer star? Because they're really stuck at 6. It's really their death at 6. They're stuck there under the grave at 6. 7 comes and it scares them because it's supposed to be creation, but it comes with all the dooms, plagues, all the things that they seal within their scriptures, right? But it's really their most fearful state. But they convince you that it's lucky, convince you it's everything, but it's still incomplete. When you look at it geometrically, it's incomplete. It's not adding up. So when things don't add up and things are incomplete, it leaves you open for chaos, fear. You understand? That's where the trick comes in.
Right. And then they say in Revelation, right? In the seventh seal, as I mentioned in Revelation, they say, behold, the number of the beast. It is the number of man. The number is what? 6, 6, 6. When reverse resurrects and is reborn as what? 9. You understand? So they're lying to us as we read these religious books with everything called the opening of the seventh seal, the Son of Man, right? But then he says, be careful. What they're trying to tell you in that quote, they've been lying to us for years, saying that represents this fictitious evil devil character. What they're saying, if you really understand the hidden meaning behind that and know how to put that in and conceptualize it, it's saying you can become a god. But they took it and they said, no, behold the number of man. It is behold the number of the beast is the number of man.
Which
It's
is on
number
your forehead, brother.
yeah, 666, and everybody feeds into that shit. The mark of the beast, the new world order, right? All the religious nutheads come out of the woodwork with it because they don't understand what it means. It is the number of man, but they have no idea what it means. All right, eighth angle. The temple containing the trihedral angles is a truncated pyramid. The power of the trapezoid perfectly manifest in a golden section-based three-dimensional structure. Thus, its architects are the masters of the realm, the all-embracing term for the fourth in the original church of Satan degrees. The sorcerers who beam from their towers the powers of darkness to rebuild the world, corrupted by 6, those who are frozen, stagnated, and shattered by the 7, which has no significance, brings doom, right? And their seal is the seal of the order of the trapezoid, the seal of the priesthood, right? So this 8 is a three-dimensional structure. Let's back up real quick. It represents a truncated pyramid. Now they say 8 holds many different significances. So 8 is this prelude to getting to where we're all trying to get to now. So what it's saying is if you busted through the stagnation of the 6, which the 6 is a beautiful thing because when we stop there, the sticks, you have to look at the 6 as being at the fork in the road. Look at it as you run in a race and you got to get to the finish line, but somebody didn't tell you there was a fork and they didn't tell you which way to go. You got to figure it out. That's why I said earlier, some do, some don't. So when you bust through the 6th, you could either get torn down, broken down, or it could strengthen you. And you bypass that now, and it's using the truncated pyramid of the 8, right? This is something you should play out in your mind, but apply it to your everyday life and your journey and your spiritual practices. This is not something that we just did tonight and just affects you tonight. It's something that should continuously stay with you, that you're able to work with and draw upon in dealing with everything, anything in life. Okay? Anything you want to add to that? We're going to that. All right. Anybody got any questions on that before we do the last one? No. All right. Ninth angle. Final one. The culmination of this dynamic process, the black flame, one of the reasons why we have it on the altar in the ritual. In its perfection, the will to power. Well, actually, we have that on the altar in every ritual pretty much, so let me not just say this ritual. Is in a glory of desire, the extension of the enlightened will. This is what the ninth angle represents. In a glory of desire, the extension of the enlightened will and initiated psyche throughout all dimensions of space, time, and thought. What in the eon of Set would be uttered as Keper. Some say Kepera, or Kefer with an F. And vampirism spells it a little differently. So, the ninth brings you to you have now come into realization of who and what you really are. Not what you think you are, not what you're trying to be, maybe not even so much what you want to be. Because sometimes what we want to be is not who and what we really are. So you come to the realization, this is what I am. Regardless of what it is, this is what I thought it was. I accept it, I embrace it, I master it, and I move on. That's the ninth angle. All right? That pretty much concludes the 9 angles. Did anybody have any other questions they wanted to ask? What?
The Baphomet came through and stood there.
Right.
Yeah.
The hornless one.
The hornless one.
Very good. I'm surprised nobody asked what that represented. Good point.
What does
And
that represent?
Huh?
Yes.
the what?
She said what it represents.
Right. Well, I what I just said was I'm surprised nobody had asked that till now. What it represented was, okay, if I know it was kind of tough to follow along as we were doing the ritual because there was a lot of things and words being said, and I know you guys were kind of engulfed in the moment. all of the things we were doing prior, before the Baphomet appeared, the hornless one, we were invoking the coming of the hornless one. And then after that, the 9 angles were walked through. And then he disappeared. Remember, most of these rituals, you're always striving to become like a Baphomet because of what it represents. Totality, equilibrium, masculine and feminine energy. Now, real quick, before I finish that, why don't you real quick before I forget?
Yeah, about to say, right?
When you put the mask on, pause
Right.
on what was going
There
on.
was a pause, and the reason why the pause was there is because when I put the mask on, in a few seconds, I felt a surge of androgynous, sexual freedom, and power. In other words, it just like shifted in my mind, and so I stood there for a moment, and I said, "Whoa, where does this come from?" That's called invoking, because when you put the mask on, it can alter your state of consciousness. That's why I asked, when you stated that, that's why I stated that. It shifts you that quickly. When that happened, at that moment, I realized what Baphomet really represents. I understood what androgyny really represents. I understood what that power of, let's say that balance between animal and beast, the balance between masculine and feminine, the balance between the dark and the light. You understood it immediately, right? And it resonated from here outward, and I could feel it. So when I was standing there before I came up, I was trying to see everybody and say, are they feeling something? Right? Are they feeling something? Because that moment of silence, it was a long moment of silence, but that moment of silence causes you to really become conscious. What do I mean by that? So you think like you're conscious, but when you're in a moment of a ritual and you really have this dead silence, what starts to go through your mind? What the hell is taking so long? What's going to happen next? Who, what, this, where, that, right? You're really thinking. You're really starting to think outside of a box and realize the box is not even there. I created the box. So the longer that took, I felt it. I let the energy surge. I said, okay, now the time is right. Because I had to go through the process of that invoked energy and understand what it feels like. And understand that Baphometic energy is the totality of the 9, is you becoming the 9, basically that rebirth of totality, that rebirth of being a master over yourself. Not just the pretty, what I'm good about, how strong I am, but I'm also this weak. And understand, I'm also these issues and problems. The good, bad, ugly, and beautiful. That moment, it all hit me and that reality came forth. So when I came up, I was waiting till I saw agitation in people, or unsure, or insecurity, or whatever was running through. I waited just for that. That's what I felt was coming through. Wait, because at that moment when the hornless one represents itself, their mind will shift back to, okay, what the heck just happened? And why is that there in front of us?
Yeah.
And if you listen closely, when Brother Beniti came forth and continued the invocation, you would have started to understand why he's standing there. When he went over the 9 angles,
That's when we invoke.
you understand? You start to understand it, and you start to say, okay, that's why that's there. But it's there because that's a representation of you and what you're looking at.
All of it.
You understand? That reflection is being reflected back to you. That's why you're wearing a mask. That's why you're in a moment of invocation and a moment of altering your state of consciousness so you can feel the Baphometic energy as it comes up here. You understand? So whatever you feel, whatever you felt, it's going to stay in there and may already come out. I don't know, but it's going to stay there. And you'll feel that Baphometic energy and you'll bring it forth and you'll be like, now I understand why that symbol is used. Because remember, that symbol is not just from Dowling, who created, or in bullcrap. That goes all the way back to the Golden Menace, which is actually related all the way back to Kemet, which is related to Amun or Amun-Re, right? And when you understand that, you'll say, okay, that's what Baphomet represents, that higher state of consciousness. Why is the torch here on Baphomet? The black flame, right? It's there because it represents the black flame of creation, the black flame of conscious expansion, the black flame of awareness. We think we're aware. And when you were in that moment of silence, that's when you were really aware. You're not aware before that because many things we do habitually. For example, y'all drive, right? And then you leave a location and then you say, well, how the hell I just got home? And you were so deep in your thoughts that you didn't even realize you're in your driveway now. And you're like, man, I might have crashed or something. I couldn't, because you were so lost in your thoughts. What took over at that moment? It's subconscious. Yeah. And those thoughts, those things is what you're trying to get to. How you can habitualize something to the point that you become that.
Now, don't drive home and try to get locked
Yeah,
in
I'm
your
not
thoughts
saying that.
intentionally and crash.
And don't wear the mask driving home either. You don't know that.
But again, to finish off your question with the Baphomet, I want him to share that experience with the mask. What I'd like to get, I mean, what was the feeling you got in the pause, and then when you looked up and saw that symbol, what were people feeling? Were they locked in the moment? What was your guys' reaction? What were you feeling? Were you just
It was
flowing
a lot
with?
of I felt a lot of energy.
Okay.
I was rocking. It was a lot of energy moving. I was rocking.
I'll tell you what energy you felt, but I'll tell you later. We'll talk about it
I
later.
was moving.
So, what all that he, again, not to go over it again, everything that Ravana Noon was just talking about, what Baphomet represents.
Well, that's what was going on.
Right.
Honestly. Before he brought it into silence in that moment, that's where my mind was. The good, the bad, the ugly, the whatever, it was there. It was in front of me. And then when I saw the Baphomet, I was like, okay. So I just wanted to.
No, and I'm glad you explained it like that, because all those things it represents, totality, equilibrium, masculine and feminine, as above, so below, all we can break down that whole concept of what Baphomet represents. It's in relationship to those 9 angles, because until we invoke that, we can't really get a thorough breakdown and understanding of what it represents. So when the young hornless one appears, then we do the invocation. It all has a representation, right?
That's what I ended up doing. I just ended up taking, when we went through the 9 angles, what I had proceeded in my mind, I just went to at each angle, dealing with it.
And that's good. That's actually a great way to do it. And then when we were finished with the 9 angles, what? The ram just he left, or it left. I shouldn't say he, because it's not really a he or a she. I only said he because Ravana Noon was portraying that role.
Right.
Anybody that does that role in that ritual
Right.
it can't really just be anybody. You got to be in the right frame of mind, because of like what he said. As we're invoking the energies, we are invoking energies. And you're going to have an experience when you put that on and play that role. Trust me, you will. So it's not, anybody can play the role. We have to do it again. You can, now that you've done the ritual. But just be prepared. There is, and again, we're grown adults, I can talk. Some people put on, there is a freaky sexual aspect to
Yes,
it.
it
I'm
was.
not going to lie to you.
Yes.
And you need to be prepared for that, because I've known some people that do that and put it on, and they've left here and they've gotten freaky deaky because, no, I'm serious. It's because it
Humping the light
ignites.
pole outside.
Well, I don't want to control that till you get to the house. But that's why I'm saying you have to be very prepared to play that role. You have to be prepared to play that role, because it's an influx of all those energies. And also, it's important because when that individual comes up, he or she that's playing that role is also admitting those energies to everybody that's here. Now remember, one thing to always understand about group rituals collectively, doing it as a group, is important, because it creates a certain type of energy as opposed to doing it individual. And this is why it's not productive when certain people come to the rituals not, in the right frame of mind. Now, we've done them in the past where literally, I can go back, and Yahuda, who's not here tonight, can tell you where I've literally had to ask some people to leave before we start because their energy was fucked up. Literally. I didn't care if they took it personal. I don't give a shit. But they came in because they were angry. One guy came in, I'm going back to 1997. I'll never forget this. And I said, right when he walked in, he had my right ear is just like piercing. He walked in, and I could tell he had a horrific fight with his wife, like really aggressive fight where it got to, hitting. I was like, nah, dude, you can't come here with that shit. And that was a chant circle we were doing that night, where energy is transferred in that circle. So what do you think? You were going to come to the ritual and get rid of all that shit? But what happens is you bring it here, and here's your answer why less and less people show up to certain rituals, because their energy's fucked up. They're not going to show up to something like this. You understand? And we talk about it in the car. I always talk about this with Sonia. I couldn't care if there's 5 people here or 500. That shit is irrelevant to me. I'd rather have 5 solid people than 500 knuckleheads, because it's better to have quality than quantity. Because quantity don't mean you're doing anything or accomplishing something. Because, pay attention to this, and I mentioned this before. When we did this, we're doing this intentionally, if you pay attention. We started out with rituals people were comfortable with, and that was for a reason. The drumming, which we're going to go back to, because drumming is at the core of everything. So it was tangible shit that people like, they deal. As we start getting into the more darker mental stuff, the invocations, the stuff that deals with your pure mental power, people can't relate. Because it just, again, it separates the strong from the weak. We're not interested in the weak. Weak-minded people will fail and fall off, and they will become victims of their own circumstance. This is what you see happening, and it's done for a reason. But anyway.
Well, there's also people that can't really deal with the drumming too. To be honest with you.
No, yeah, I'm sure.
They can't handle the drumming.
You're right.
I talk to them, they don't say, but you can tell, there's that uneasiness and, especially if you talk about the spirit of the drum and how the drum can take you into a transferred,
That's right.
That's some of the ones.
And they can't,
Exactly. Those are some of the people that come in here and they're like, oh, that ain't gonna work on me. Next thing you know, they get thrown across the
And
room.
we witnessed that, a handful of times, bunch of times. And you're right. There is, because, again, if it's connecting to like Boudin or the spirit, or I don't like to use the word possession because that's religious, or I like to use the word a person evoking and that spirit maybe mounting them or controlling them. That frightens people, because the ones that resist it, the reason why they resist it, because there's something within them that's connecting to it, but they fear it, they don't know what it is. So we watch people come in here and sit like, just like afraid to move when the energy gets going, because there's a lot of power and energy in that drum.
Yeah.
And so the fear.
Yeah.
But again, the fear and ignorance is the number one disease that plagues this world. It's a killer of many people, and it'll always be a killer of many people. And the simple solution to that, easier said than done, but trust me, when, like Ravana Noon said earlier, when you constantly overthink and try to figure it all out, that's where you'll never understand it. And you're really hurting yourself, because if you don't just submerge yourself in the experience, you can never get the benefits from it. Because there was one young Haitian brother that came a couple times, and the first few times he was like a statue. And then he finally loosened up, and he came up to us after the ritual, and he was like, man, I finally got it, because I stopped locking up, trying to figure it out. And I said, stop using terms to say the word afraid. Say it so you can feel better. You see, you're right, afraid. Now that I stopped being afraid, I was receptive, and now I got the experience, and I benefited from it. But when you just sit there like that, I mean, literally, I remember the first time the dude gave, he sat in that corner right there on the chair. He didn't even move. He was just like, every time I looked over there, he was just like this, looking around. Didn't get up.
Scared.
And was scared when he saw people getting up and dancing. When you have something like that happen, 9 angles, what's creating that fear is what you would want to work on if you were using that for the 9 angles. Why am I afraid? Why do I get that feeling?
Here's what's interesting. When you're hitting the drums, each angle you put your hands creates what? A different sound.
Oh, correct, yes.
So drummers invoke the 9th angle when they're
That's true. I never looked at it like that.
Yeah.
You definitely evoke it,
each drum, each angle you're hitting
when I
creates a different
and it's
sound.
funny you say that because when I'm playing, it gets to a point where I'm not even looking at
Yeah.
the drum no more. My eyes are closed. I can play the drums with my eyes closed, and just I'm bringing it up because yes, the hand is always hitting it at a certain angle, but it's not. I don't even need to look at it because I can
You
feel
alter
it.
your state of
Right,
consciousness.
I can feel it because I know how to hit the drum. I could be looking up, eyes closed, look to the side, but I know where that drum is, and I know how my hand needs to be placed when I'm hitting that drum. That's a good point. I never looked at it like that. See, I just learned something. So yeah, long story short, to finish with this system can be applied in many different ways. So now I hope what we explained before we start, I hope now it makes more sense, and I hope you really understand now what this ritual is about. And most of all, I hope you leave here and continue to use what it represents. Okay?
I have one question.
Sure.
Now during the ritual, you mentioned something about goats and the young, or,
The hornless one. That was another description of what Baphomet was.
okay, that's what
Yeah.
that was. Okay.
That was actually mentioned a couple of times through the ritual.
Okay.
Prior to the coming, during, and then I believe briefly when he disappeared, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it's mentioned at least 2 times.
Okay.
That's correct. But now you see what these terms meant in the language. It's just another term for, say, Set or Amun-Ra or all these symbols. Because remember, the occult speaks in symbols, metaphors, allegories. There's a lot of Masonic stuff in that too. Think about it, frozen. What do they say in Masonry? You become frozen at what? The 32nd degree, right? Now 3 and 2 is 5. Go back to what the 5th angle represents. Connected to Masonry. So when you're traveling the path of Masonry, that's why I said a fork in the road. You become 32 degrees. You either stay there or you can continue on in your journey.
Yep.
So it can be
Across the
applied.
hot burning thing.
Across the hot burning sands. And staying ahead of the sun. Because if the sun gets in front of you, it can burn you up. You understand? So symbology with Ra is being invoked on that angle, you have to keep pace with the sun. Because once the sun gets in front of you,
That's it.
it's a wrap. You understand? So many different things. But anyway, I hope you guys now understand the ritual, and I hope you got something out of it and continue to get something out of it. All right? Time to grub. Peace.
Yeah, I'm on.
Real quick, I know we have a small group here.